while things are wet, you can go in and give some definition to your shorelines. If you don't feel that there's enough color on there, you could always touch it into your wet paint on your surface. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me here today. I'm Lynda Norman. I'm a watercolor artist in British Columbia. Today, we're going to be playing with some watercolor straight from the tube onto canvas. One of my favorite things to do is to apply watercolor straight from the tube to a canvas. Today, we're going to use a canvas board. It does the same job as typical canvas that's wrapped around a frame. I got these some time ago, and they're from De La Rowney. They're it's called Simply Canvas Panel, 100% cotton. It's 11 by 14 size. Nice size for this technique. Smaller sizes are fun to do too. I've also done them as large as 3 feet by 4 feet. Any larger than that, I'm physically not capable of holding and moving the canvas around to let the water flow. So I try to keep that in mind, but these smaller ones are often just a really fun way to play with the pigment, especially granulating paints. Daniel Smith has some beautiful granulation in their paints, and that's the brand I typically use. I will do one in the future, one of these as well, with the Rockwell paints, which are called, the set I have, or the few that I have, are called Self-Evolving, which is another whole dimension as well, and that'll be really fun to do. But today we're going to use the canvas board, and that can be popped into a frame later on. You can mat it if you want. There's lots of options with these canvas boards. I haven't used this particular brand before, the cotton, so it'll be an interesting exercise for us all to sort of explore what that will look like. So we're going to use, I'm going to use Daniel Smith straight from the tube. So I've got a Mayan dark blue, undersea green, moon glow, and some quinacridone gold later for some highlights. We'll apply them with, I'm going to use this little, it's a coffee gift card, expired of course. never let them go unused, that's for sure. I'm going to use this and maybe a couple of these little plastic tabs from produce or bread enclosures. You could use palette knives. I just like to have the credit card. I like the way I can hold it in my hand. But there are some really nice options, and you can get some great effects by using various palette knives. Some of them are made in great shapes. This is a nice little one. I think it came in a package with some others. Then it's got some different angles and some different shapes if you were interested in making application of a pigment in certain areas. But I'm going to set those there. I don't think I want to use those today. And I'm going to move this out of the way. When I put my pigment out of the tube, I like to I'm just going to slide this up for a moment so you can see this against the black. This is a piece of photo paper. I like it because it's non-porous. Whoops. I can put my paint straight from the tube. I use the back. I put it on the back. I can use that on there and it's not going to soak through. I can pluck it off easily. I can let it dry on here if there's anything left and reconstitute it later with a spritz of water. And so I'm not wasting the paint that doesn't get used in this project. So I use the back of it also as well. I've mentioned this before. If you use the front of the photo paper, the shiny side, it's got an emulsion on it that is made specifically to grasp your inks when you're printing a photo. If you get that wet, it's going to get sticky and it's going to mix with your paints and not going to leave you with nice pure pigment to use. So when I consider doing a landscape, I want to have a sky, I want to have some land, and then in the front, usually I wait to determine what that's going to be until I get the rest of the design happening. Then I'll be inspired to whether it's a lake or a meadow or that kind of thing. So to start then, I wanted consider what's going to be happening in the top, at least 1/3 of my painting. And that means Mayan dark blue. And this is, I need to get my paint supply topped up. I'm running low on my favorite colors. So there's the Mayan dark blue. That's probably for this size canvas quite a bit more than I need, but it's there. It's what came out of that little tube the way I was squeezing it. And then I'm going to put right next to that some moon glow. And again, I'm running low on that one as well. I can tell I use them a lot. So I just want a tiny bit of the moon glow. I'll put that on there. These paints are thick. These tubes are well used. But I think they're probably the same consistency that you would get from a fresh new tube. It's kind of a toothpastey kind of consistency. So I've got my Mayan dark blue, my moon glow for my sky, and now I'm going to add my undersea green, my go-to, and that's going to represent the main part of my land, mountain area. And some of the Mayan dark blue will blend into that, and that'll create another level, another depth of color. I'm not going to apply the quinacridone gold yet to my little palette here, just because it's a color that I love, but it's a color that will, when it's on a surface, it will often stain a little bit, and it also moves things around more than I'm wanting to experience at this point in this design. So I'm just going to set this aside. I will add it in a bit when we're ready for it. So let's get our canvas ready. Set this to my side here. I'm going to use my hockey brush. Hake, H-A-K-E is how it's spelt. This is a Ron Ranson brand from ProArt. If you can find one, it's ideal. Otherwise, just any H-A-K-E hockey brush from your art supply store, maybe a craft store even, online, works really well for this process. It's goat hair. It holds a ton of water. You could also use, I've also used my Watercolor Online solo brushes. That one's got a bit of paint still stuck in it from my last project here. And that works really well too. My thoughts on this part of the process are that I want to get water on the canvas, but I'm not necessarily concerned about getting the whole canvas saturated. Where areas are left with no water, and I run my credit card or my plastic card across, or my palette knife, when it touches those surfaces where there's no water, you get a really lovely textured, mottled kind of effect, and you'll see that in a few moments. When I'm doing bigger canvases, I will often use brushes like this, another hockey brush. I've used house painting brushes, and they're great for just getting water on the surface. You could spray, I suppose. I tend not to want to do spraying so much just because it's inconsistent. And if you're using, especially if you're using a mister bottle, you're going to get a full coverage. And again, I do want some of those drier areas. If you were to use one of these, like a spritzer, that might be okay as well, but that probably could leave you with some puddly areas. Probably, again, not something I'm willing to work with. So I'm going to wet my brush. It's dripping. It's absolutely dripping. I'm going to put lots of water. And I'm going to bring the water down probably to about about 2/3, maybe 3/4. And I'm just happy that the water is on there. There's enough there that when I move the board back and forth, I'm going to get a bit of flow happening, so that when my pigment's on there, it'll move around as well. I'm going to use the short end of my credit card. On a larger painting, if I had more paints, I might want to use the bigger one. And I'm going to pick up the colors sort of like that. Okay, I don't want to, just get dots of color, so I kind of want to get the colors on there. And I'm going to remember to always start on the side. If you start in the middle, you're going to get a glob of color, and that's going to be a challenge to deal with. Because I'm right-handed, I tend to start on this side more. My Mayan dark blue is here, my undersea green is here. So I'm just moving things along, sort of creating the foundation here of my landfall. And you can see where water is flowing down. It's just making some beautiful shapes, some inroads. Always good to have lots of paper towel or absorbent toweling on hand. I'm not going to tip this too much. I love that what is happening now is creating some very interesting shapes. And if I bring this down, I'm just going to tip this over so that my green is here and my blue is now on the bottom. And I just want to show you on here where, if we're down on this area where there was no water before, and you get this sort of granulating effect over the surface of the canvas. So basically you're getting the canvas showing through, right? And you can move this up into the water a tiny bit. We can add more water later. I love that this bit of the design is kind of diffusing down through that area. And we're going to use these organic shapes where the water has pulled the pigment to our advantage. Often what I will do, now that I'm just about finished with the paint on my credit card, I'll dip the whole card in water and drag that through. So essentially I'm using my credit card as a tool to move my paint around. So I'm just shaping maybe some land areas. And let it sit for a few moments and decide where this might end up. I don't want to tip it too much. I love what's happening up here. I think what I'd like to do is I'm going to go back into my paint. I've still got some water happening up here. I love that this is, created those top edges of what will look like to me a mountain range perhaps. And I'm going to turn my board slightly just for a moment. And I just want to pick up a bit of the blue and the bit of the moon glow. I don't want to go down into the green. And I'm going to come from this side this time and just very lightly bring some blue into this sky. It is a messy process. I'm just going to clean my credit card off now because I've got enough of that on there for the time being. Now you can use, I don't know if I've got a smaller spray bottle at the moment. Oh, there we go. Look at this. These are handy. This came from the scrapbook section in one of our dollar stores locally, and it's just a nice little light mister. Now, I do love this, but I don't know that I want this sort of mountain or cityscape or whatever's happening here up in my clouds. Might be a little bit fantasy based for this. So I'm going to just spray some water and let that water move some of that pigment right off the page. or the page, the canvas. So you can see, if I was to have started that in the middle, I would have this big, you know, clump of very deep, thick pigment. So now when I turn it back, because it's got enough moisture on the page, and I'm going to, I don't want to spray myself in the face with it. There we go. I can direct the colors across the page. Now that we've got this beautiful mountain range in the background, I can see it's becoming mountains and different things are happening. We'll go in now and start shaping things a little bit. So my typical cloud tool, and this is just, I'm just picking up excess moisture. Because it's wet, it's going to continue to move and diffuse and work around the page. I'm going to tap out some of this, so we're going to get sort of some misty things happening here. So it's a constant play with the water and the pigment. Now I can see where this area here would lend itself perhaps to another bit of mountain area. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of what's left on my wee palette, and I'm just going to encourage that to become another part of a mountain area. So it's a bit abstract-y. You've got the colors blending on their own. They're moving on their own. This is showing me that there are some, perhaps maybe some little snow caps, things happening up here. So if I just now work with what's there, make a little bit of, now, what I like to do, while this is sort of forming its own sky shapes and cloud shapes up above here, I want to think about this happening down here. I want to, I don't know if this is quite the right brush, but I'll start with this. I want to carve out a shoreline. I do love how this is organic and it's flowing down there. But if I was to just define a tiny bit, and what I'm doing is, with a dry brush, I'm going to move that out of the way. I've cleaned my brush, I've dried it off on my paper towel, and I'm just pulling the color away horizontally. And if I move this up here, it's going to give me another sense of depth. So that's going to be like maybe a little inlet. And then this area here, because I said inlet, I'm going to make it water. So I'm going to take a bit of the blue just on my dry brush and feather it through just so we have just a hint of color. It could be a snow-capped lake or a snow-capped mountain with a frosty, snowy lake. But by doing this lightly, I'm not giving it specific lines. I'm just encouraging the colors to flow a little more gently through this area. These clouds look a little spiky here, so I'm just going to go in and maybe maybe make them a bit more round shaped. I like round fluffy clouds. And as I said, this will continue to move and to flow. The water on the canvas, just until it dries, it's continually on the move. So that will give us some nice cloud shapes. When I'm making the clouds on the canvas, I don't worry about cleaning or using a clean part of my paper towel. I just basically am just shifting the focus of the water a tiny bit. And maybe softening here. You can see there's probably just a bit of an edge. And we can just soften those a tiny bit. Now's the time, as the canvas is drying fairly quickly in most of the areas. I see I've got a hair on there. Where you can see it is starting to dry significantly. Keep an eye if you've got sharp edges or things that you're not happy with. Now is the time to deal with that. You can't, with this process, easily go in afterwards and add more water. That is going to change. It's going to start moving things around. It's going to give you different edges that don't match what's already happened on your page with the water and the pigment. So I think, you know, if you keep that in mind, you need to work fairly quickly. Now this area down here is the forefront, the land shapes happening here. So now I think is when I'm going to go with my quinacridone gold. I'm going to let this continue to do what it wants to do. To me it reminds me of mists and how the dark parts are bits of a mountain popping through the mist and the clouds. So I'm happy with that. I'll go back and I'll work more on defining a shoreline perhaps after I get my gold in. But I just want to put a tiny bit of that in here just to show you how that works. It's still a bit damp. Oh, that's a lot. It's a full tube and it just wanted to squeeze right out. So like I said, the beauty of this is that even though I've used most of what was sitting up on the surface of this little palette, I can reconstitute that later and dip my brush in it, and it's going to be beautiful and lovely and workable for other projects. So I'm just, with the gold, as I say, you want to be careful and you want to be strategic. And then maybe we'll put a tiny bit up here, and that could perhaps go in. All right, so this is going to create a bit of interest in the bottom without being overpowering. And then I will go back in. Well, I could use this little spray bottle, or I could use my spritzer. I'm just going to move this so you can see. So it just spritz. It doesn't give a fine mist. It gives droplets, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. If I was to use the fine mist, I may run the risk of adjusting that part of my design, and I'm not sure I want to do that yet. So this can be more focused. And I'm just going to let those run. Like I say, we need lots of paper towels. And now that this section is dry enough, I can easily tilt my canvas to allow the quinacridone gold to move across the page. Pardon me. And now we'll go on the other angle. And it's going to work sort of like the striations in rock formations, I think. That's how I like to think of it. I'm going to leave this section here with the white showing through. I kind of like that organic-y kind of look to it. And we just bring this across here to and I love that this blue now is going to follow that that water and sort of give a bit of a definition, maybe a little bit of a rise in the landfall there. This area here is sort of forming its own bit of design. And I want to, there we go. I want to move that. I would like to go back. I think what this bottom could use is probably a bit more of the Mayan dark blue. And so that's Moon Glow. And this is the Mayan dark blue. So I'm going to add a bit more. And this, actually, I'm just going to put it right on the credit card. It's wet. I can still see water moving and pooling there. And because I didn't really like that there's a light spot there, I'm just going to just add some of the dark blue to that, just to bring a basis to my painting. And I'm just going to leave that sit, let it do what it needs to do. Let a bit of the water run. And a bit of a spritz there. All right. This is quite thick on this corner. You could always move that out if you wanted to. The thicker areas, once they've dried, and over time, because it's watercolor and they do dry out, the thicker areas will tend to crackle. But I found that not to be a big issue. I treat these paintings the same as I do my watercolors on paper. And I give them several coats of a Camar varnish and then several coats of a UV protectant varnish. Krylon has some great products for that. And that seems to have done everything it needs to do. Those crackled bits do not fall off. I suppose if you picked away at them, you could make that happen. But for all intents and purposes, it just adds another element of depth and texture and interest to the painting. So I think I don't want to do a lot more right now with this because it's quite wet on the bottom. But you can see where things are headed. You can go in and shape things. Use your acrylic stiffer bristle brushes. Go in and while things are wet, you can go in and give some definition to your shorelines. If you don't feel that there's enough color on there, you could always touch it into your wet paint on your surface or back into your little palette. And you can create a shoreline. You can create bits of water, ripples, waves, that kind of thing. You can continue to lift out. This is my favorite thing. I just love taking away some of the pigment and creating those shorelines. Varying the heights of them, if you keep everything, as long as you keep everything on a horizontal level, you can create an incredible looking shoreline. And there's some shadows you can manipulate and work with, some little inlets. But again, I would stop doing that until this was more dry. Just for demonstration purposes, I will just continue to show you a tiny bit. So you can see the possibility, and just by carving out or pulling away that tiny bit of color and leaving some underneath, you get that sense of the shoreline's defined, but you've got this shadow happening below. I try to remember when I'm doing my my shorelines like this to keep everything as level and horizontal as possible. Our tendency, our natural tendency is to do this motion, and that does not work well when you're creating a shoreline. You want things to be on a horizontal level for sure. So yeah, have some fun. Work with what's there. Use your imagination. I mean, now that I've added this color at the forefront, I love that the mountains have receded. They're distanced in the background just because of the diffusing color. I've got this deep dark color in the front here. It's doing some things on its own that you know, are so interesting to me. This might become you know, some bit of shrubbery of some sort just because of the way it's moving up like that. This as well. You could take your credit card. I'm just going to dip it in the color that's there, and you know, make some tree trunks. Have some fun. This will continue to dry. We will post a photo of the finished piece at the end of the video. In the meantime, oh, just one thing I just noticed here. I can see where, because I've added the water here, it's blossoming up. Take a nice soft dry brush, very soft. You could use this. You could use your hockey brush, any soft brush, soft bristle, and just very lightly encourage that water away from there. Once you've got the water out, then you can bring that bit of color that's been left there, bring it out into your design, make it work for you. So as always, it's a case of you know, painting fairly quickly, fairly loosely, but keeping an eye on things and seeing where they're headed and monitoring that and stepping in where you need to create new shapes, remove bits of paint to enhance your design. But yeah, I love that these are quick and simple. The colors are rich, and the designs basically come from the pigments and the water, mostly. I very seldom have to do much nudging to make it come true. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. I had some fun with some paint straight out of the tube. I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed creating it. And if you do, subscribe to the channel.